if they invested $2 million into changing the energy footprint and approach, the payback was within 1 year. PV panels, as we know, at that time, I think it was US $3 a watt, would have been payback 5-6 years. So effectively 20% on investment. We had 100% on investment by energy conservation. So we effectively reduced their footprint by 50%, returned $2 million in 1 year, and then we effectively introduced PV panels on all of the buildings. Well, the engineers at the Skelec Electric Company started panicking because at that point they almost had no bills. Okay? So that's basically the story of where GreenEdge basically started. Quickly, I think collaboration between engineers within the region is very important because of globalization. The good news is CDBs now have funding with the European Union to fund energy conservation projects. Last year we bidded a project for St. Kitts with 40 buildings and pumping stations. International bid. We placed second behind on a technical merit bid. We placed second behind a German company. And the company behind us in third place had been in the business for 60 years. We have only been in the business 6 years. But that comes from collaborating with talented engineers within the region. So I just thought we'd have a quick conversation about how we became involved. What is energy conservation? Well, it's basically reducing the energy you use as well as using the energy you consume more effectively, basically. There are a lot of importance to other fields. Engineering, of course, infrastructure planning, architecture in terms of sustainability, energy efficiency, building design, general planning, resilience planning, sustainability, interior design, use of materials. In our architectural division, we are building homes for very wealthy individuals who can afford the most effective solutions in today's world in terms of LED solutions, VRV type, air conditioning, double glazed windows and doors. So effectively our approach is one, not necessarily of economic sustainability, because it depends on the economic viability as well. But we're putting together products that will last the test of time, basically. Our energy conservation approach. Surprisingly, for most of you who don't know, energy consumption can be reduced in commercial buildings from between 30 to 80% with pretty viable, effective cost measures. In some cases, we start with energy audits. And the way we do the effectively carry out energy audit is we connect. We download data in real time on the internet. We identify and strategize efficiency initiatives, assess and reduce, implementation in terms of lighting, air conditioning, and other measures, and educate and create a culture of efficiency. Now, unfortunately in our generation, this is a challenge. To educate us as to who we are now in terms of efficiency is very difficult. I find myself wasting. I'm a waster. I grew up that way. This morning as I left the hotel room, I ran back in and turned off the AC. But that's come over time. So I think the education has got to start with the next generation, right? I go to brush my teeth in the morning, my son turns off the tap. Dad, you're wasting water. He's 6 years old. So we need to educate. The education has got to come from within the schools. It's not too late for us, but we've got to try. Automation, computerized management systems. Automation is huge. We've done a lot of automation in banks, in commercial facilities, time controls. Okay. When we set up an energy audit, we set up a data analytics platform. I don't want to get overly sophisticated here, but it's like a dashboard in a vehicle. What do we want to see? Well, in a vehicle, you need to see where your fuel consumption, your fuel gauge. You need to see temperature. There are things that we look for when we're effecting an audit on a building. And this can vary, okay? Energy consumption. We'll pick aspects of the building in terms of energy consumption, in terms of air conditioning, UPS equipment. We'll actually break out energy use within the building. Okay? This is very important for larger commercial facilities. Basically, what we look at from the data analytics is what we call passive and active energy. Very important. Passive energy is basically what you consume during your daily use, and passive use is nighttime. So active is during the day, and passive is basically nighttime. We have seen facilities where passive energy use at night could consume as much as 70% of what you're using during the day. A lot of that is because of lack of automation, lack of timer controls, people walking out of banks and leaving equipment running, air conditioning running arbitrarily. Okay? So this is extremely important in terms of automation. We speak to rapid paybacks of half a year to 2 years with relatively limited capital investment. Simple use of air conditioners. Get rid of the old AC systems. Automation. We now build smart homes where you can effectively control the entire home or building from wherever you wish in the world. Turn off equipment, control temperature, etc. Energy conservation to reduce footprint. There's a company called D. Walwyn and Company back home where they have about 8 locations. We were able to provide them with a 50% savings. The client energy bill was huge. Outdated lighting, AC technologies. We retrofitted lighting, changed windows, very leaky buildings, sealed up the buildings, and therefore they had a payback of, was less than a year, 50%. Okay? This was one of the plantation facilities that they owned with a restaurant. We were able to do retrofitting here as well. Energy conservation before renewable energy. Now, I'll tell you something. PV panel suppliers will never try to convince the owner or the client to reduce energy use. If I am a PV panel supplier, I'm selling panels. Okay? So I have a lot of friends selling PV panels. So I'm not trying to get at them. But basically, very few PV panel suppliers say to a client, go and reduce your energy and call me back. It doesn't really happen. Okay? So when Horsfords approach us about the PV panels and reducing energy, we reduce the energy first, and then we use far less investment in PV panels than they initially thought they would have to use. Okay? So that's a very important strategy. Some of the facilities, okay, they invested in about 400 kilowatt systems in many different locations. Energy conservation in homes, offices. Calypso Bay Resorts is a project that I built about 10 years ago from a developer perspective. And we built 60 villas, the blue roofs. And since then we've gone through and we've changed all the pumps for the swimming pools. We've changed all the pumps for the sewage treatment facilities. Okay? We've seen 60% reduction in the central facilities energy management footprint. There's PV panels on my home. So you know I'm not just here with some lip service. PV panels on my engineering office. Okay? But again, energy reduction of 50 and 60% before we engage PV panels. Energy conservation in new buildings. We have a new development which is called Sundance Ridge. And we're using automation. Automation is huge there. Most of the villas that we're building there are being automated. Sorry. This is one of the buildings where we have a client with more money than sense. He spent $1.2 million on an automation system, okay, which is ridiculous. But I call it up because if you can automate a building of that size and manage it from overseas or anywhere in the world, you can basically do anything. But $1.2 million there's no reason for spending $1.2 million on automation. Okay? This is another villa that we just finished designing and building. It's on a cliff. And basically, we're preparing now on a cliffside for a massive PV installation, okay, with Tesla commercial batteries. So this entire villa has the potential to be off-grid, okay? Importing fossil fuels to the OECS. All countries in the OECS are totally dependent on imported fossil fuels, or almost totally dependent. In 2011, I think it's imported about 210 million in fuel imports. 88% overall energy through imported oil products. St. Lucia, as far as I know, this comes up on it, 285 million roughly in St. Lucia on actually electricity, fossil fuels being used for electricity. It's about 7% of your GDP is being used in St. Lucia. Almost 300 million EC dollars. That's pretty significant, okay? Some importation export figures that you're far more aware of than I am. But the primary one was the fact that about 7% of your GDP is being spent on electricity generation, okay? Role of OECS governments. We need for energy conservation policy, climate change, natural disasters, economic stability, less dependency on foreign factors. OECS is behind the game. I mentioned the fact of Germany, limited sunshine, but huge policy. Invest in environmental sustainability. How do we support and encourage our OECS governments to implement national and regional energy policy that will benefit our economies? Barbados, late last year, I don't know if it's effective into law, but Barbados has got what they're projecting as a 20-year policy that was presented in December last year, I think. Yeah. Caribbean closer to having a regional energy efficiency building code. Social and political impact. I did have a file that I wanted to open quickly. St. Lucia. Oh, okay. Energy snapshot on St. Lucia. Your gross domestic product, 1.3 billion US dollars. Electricity, 7% of GDP. Energy consumption by sector, that's broken down. Commercial is 50%, other 6.6, domestic 29. I think what's important as well is basically whether policy is being enacted. You've got targets for renewable energy. In each case, there are projections for what you can build out in terms of geothermal. Geothermal is potential for 170 megawatt. That's huge for St. Lucia. Biomass, potential there as well. Solar, 36 megawatt, right? Okay, Belize, quite just quickly. Gross domestic product, 1.6 billion US dollars. They're spent on fuel less than 0.1%. Okay? Total spent less than 2%. Okay? Why? Because Belize has got actually interconnection policy with Mexico as well for cheap electricity. They've got hydro, and Belize has been pretty effective in getting policies together. And their electricity cost is probably about 18 US cents. Ours are 26, 27 cents, roughly. Yeah. So Belize has been pretty effective in moving that bar forward. Okay? So I picked Belize because I thought that they were a model that we, within the region, we could sort of aspire to.